Hi, welcome to another edition of Entrepreneur Spotlight. This is a special one because this is our first time doing one interview style. My name is MJ Hardaway. I'm the president here at Always Lean Forward. Today we have Debra from Arbonne International. Debra is actually a mother of two wonderful kids, 7 and 9 years old. She's also is married to a U.S. veteran of the U.S. Army. She enjoys doing things like meditating, reading, outdoor activities. Debra is actually very special. She holds a bachelor's degree from UC Irvine, a teaching credential from Cal State Long Beach, and also a master's degree from UCLA. Now she's a health and wellness consultant with Arbonne International, and she enjoys the fact that she's able to educate people about health and wellness. So, Deborah, thank you so much for doing this interview with us, and we're just glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So, just starting off with some basic things, I know I gave a little brief introduction about you, but just tell me a little about yourself and maybe your background.
Sure. So I was previously a teacher. So now I've been building my health and wellness business for about 8.5 years.
Oh,
And um, so a little bit of way background. And one of the reasons why I feel like I landed in health and wellness. Originally, my passion really comes from helping people get healthy and stay healthy and change kind of the cycle of our lives. I come from a really traditional Mexican background. My mom immigrated here when she was 35. And unfortunately, my father passed away from a heart attack when I was little. So I feel like a lot of my passion for helping people get healthy comes from there. And then I went into teaching, which was great, but I wanted the flexibility that my business gave me, and so many other reasons. But that's just a quick little background on me and where I come from.
oh, perfect, perfect. Thank you for that. So I know I mentioned that some of the schools you went to. So where did you first start off? I know it was UC Irvine, correct? That was where you first. So what
Yes,
made you
that's
choose
where.
that school and around what was your major and what things like that picking?
Yeah, sure. So right out of high school, I went straight to UC Irvine, and my major there was sociology, and my minor was education.
Mm.
And I lived on campus. I loved it. It was close enough, but far enough. I'm from the Whittier Pico Rivera area in
Oh,
Southern
okay.
California. Yeah, now I live in Long Beach, California. And from there, I actually went straight. I kind of did things a little bit backwards. I went straight to my master's degree at UCLA.
Oh,
And so I had my master's pretty early on, and I thought I was going to go straight into my doctorate, but I decided that I had to pull back a bit and say, okay, that's not exactly where I wanted to focus
oh.
the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, Doctorate is definitely a different level. And so I decided to start teaching. I mean, no, actually, first I started to work in higher education because my master's degree is in higher education. And I worked at Cal State. Actually, first, I worked at UC Irvine, my alma mater, and in admissions and outreach, and then later I worked at Cal State Long Beach in transfer admissions and then outreach. And while I was there, I started taking my credentialing classes. I finished my credential and I went on to teaching. And then that's when then life completely turned after that, and I decided to make a big career change and go into business in health
Hey,
and wellness.
perfect, perfect. So
Yeah.
then switching over more to after you're getting done with teaching, what do you think was probably the main reason that really motivated you to switch from having being a teacher? Because being a teacher, I think, in my opinion, is more of a passion driven job or career.
Mhm.
So what would make you switch from doing that to maybe to switching over to health and wellness, or just or mostly switching over just to having your own business rather than being a teacher?
Right. So I would say the number one driving force was that I wanted the flexibility. I
Oh,
wanted the flexibility, and at the time, it was really the flexibility to be able to raise my kids the way I wanted to. So that's what I thought it was. I wanted that flexibility. Honestly, I wanted to be able to decide what my stresses were. There was going to be stress no matter what, but I wanted to decide what my life looked like as opposed to not having really control over like my hours and that sort of thing. So it was really primarily first the flexibility, and health and wellness. Like I mentioned, it's always been something that I've really been passionate about anyway. And so I was always learning about that anyway. And so now I just have this really great company to back me up, and honestly, I really enjoy it. I enjoy talking about it anyway, and so that's kind of what we all want in life, right? To be able
yeah.
do something we love, have
Exactly.
flexibility,
Exactly.
right? And so it
Especially, I think,
covered a lot of things for me.
yeah, I think flexibility is probably like the biggest thing with people because whether when they want to get off, when they want to take time off, be with their kids, I think that's the biggest thing. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
what made you kind of lean towards more of the health and wellness? Because I know you said it was important with you even
Yeah.
when you were growing up with your family and stuff. So, what would be like your biggest factor with health and wellness?
Well, it's interesting because I was always interested in health and wellness, but I think we first start to think about that in terms of what we eat, right? Which
Yeah,
is normal, which is
yeah,
natural. It's a big part
yeah,
of it.
definitely.
But as I took health and wellness kind of to another level, and I started to read more about it,
Mm,
when I was actually pregnant with my first child. Although now, what I love about younger people is that younger people are so more well versed in health and
yeah.
wellness now than when I was young. It took me a while to get there. And so I took it, to the level of reading what was in products because
Mm,
now I wanted to be cautious about what I put on my kids, for example, right?
yeah.
And myself.
Especially,
And
I think, especially if you're pregnant and stuff, it's
yes,
like because it's because you're eating for two people, so it's like whatever you're eating,
exactly.
they have
Right.
to feed off of that as well. So yeah,
Right. And so, sometimes when we're younger, we don't even really think about ourselves. We're
oh
just having
yeah,
fun. But now the good thing is a lot more younger people are healthy, which is great. But I started to read about the toxins in products, and that kind of freaked me out. I thought, I don't even know how to raise a plant. I thought, how am I going to raise a child? Right. So I started to read about the junk really in chemicals and products, and it freaked me out a bit. And then so I found this great company where I was like, okay, I want those products because they're safe for my baby. And that's kind of how it evolved. Even before getting married, my now husband, he used to go to the store to buy something, and I used to say, turn it around and make sure it doesn't have this in it and this in it, because I was really taking health and wellness to another
yeah,
level,
yeah.
for us
As
as
you
well.
should, yeah,
Yeah, so that's kind of how it started. I was looking for products that were safer, and then it evolved into even helping people with like what they eat.
yeah, definitely. I totally understand. Especially, I think as you had mentioned, like you when you were pregnant, I think that was the biggest thing because like again, like you're feeding for two people, so it's like how are they going to accept that? Especially when you're pregnant, you don't want anything complications. So yeah, like yeah,
Right.
it makes sense. So
Yeah.
then, joining your company, what was that like the first company that you first talked to, or was there other ones that you were introduced to? Like what made you choose?
Choose
Yeah,
Arbonne.
yeah,
So
correct.
I chose Arbonne. Interestingly enough, this was probably the first company where I even considered starting my own business, right? Since I started my business, I've met or been introduced to or been around, because now I do a lot of business networking. I have so many other companies that I know about. And actually, even though, I'm 8.5 years in, I'm just so happy that Arbonne was the first one, and it was the right one for me.
Yeah,
There's just the integrity of the business, and so it was because I come from an education background. I didn't know lick about business. My family was not business oriented, so for me to do a business is very outside of the box, right? Very uncomfortable,
yeah,
which in business we learned that uncomfortable is good, right?
yeah.
Um, we
Most
learned that
definitely.
that means you're growing.
Yeah.
So the great thing about my business is that it's under the umbrella of a big company, right? It's
Okay.
under the umbrella of Arbonne. And so the company, but we really are our own consultants, and we do everything,
Yeah.
taxes and the whole bit, as an independent consultant, truly. And so Arbonne just has made it really simple in a lot of ways to have your own business, where hats off to the people who do it from the ground up, right? But Arbonne, being the umbrella company, makes a lot of things simple, right? So much
Mhm.
is done for us. We're really like the spokesperson,
Yeah,
for our
exactly. Yeah.
brand. And it just happens to be, I believe, just high in integrity in every way. And most of all, what drew me, sorry, I thought I had turned off those interruptions.
That's fine, no
What
problem.
drew me in were the ingredient policy, the safety, the health part of it. And I definitely have not felt that. I definitely have solidified over the years that this is just the right company for me, and just the right time and place, and trending in the world and globally
Yeah.
and all of that. Yeah.
Exactly, and then even for, like, some people that, things like being the umbrella of a company, that still makes you a business because even in the world of 2021, like, almost anything is a business nowadays. It's like just
Absolutely.
simple things, Uber, DoorDash, stuff like that. Like that's a business that's under the umbrella. So it's like, yeah. So
Absolutely.
what I was gonna say. So basically, so what do you got? What would you do? What does a typical day look like for you, or what do you guys do and stuff like that?
Okay, good question. So this is different for everybody because one of the nice things about our business is that um, it's really like we get to design the way we do it, right?
Okay.
Right now, the great thing is actually even before right now, the
Mhm.
great thing is that Arbonne was always I mean, really, as long as there's been, internet was a thing, because we've actually been around for 41 years, the company.
Oh,
Yeah. So, but as long as internet was the thing, we've done everything online. As long as I've had my company, I have my online franchise, right? My
mhm.
website online,
Yeah.
and Arbonne takes care of that, which is great. I just have it. And so I send people to shop at my website, which makes it really easy. I focus more on the education piece, right? And
Mm,
so my typical day, I'm going to start with something that's probably, not what you're thinking, but the more I learn and read about business, and, you may or may not know it, but it really starts with focusing on me in the morning, and
yeah.
so I rise
Mm,
before my children, and
definitely.
so I do things to focus on me as opposed to going straight to like a computer or a phone.
Yeah.
And that includes things like, reading, listening to audiobooks, meditating, stretching, journaling, like those things that's how I start my morning.
Yes.
Get the kids off to school into their rooms since we're doing distance learning.
Zoom.
And then once everybody's going, then I sit down, and that's where I say we design it, right? Because somebody who doesn't have kids, they may just go straight into,
Yeah.
they don't have the kids. But I'm able to put, my family, and it's like, okay, next to is my business. So I'm able to really fit my business into really kind of the nooks and crannies, and we were always online, like I mentioned. So that's why I feel really blessed that I've had this business,
Yeah.
especially in the last year, since the whole world has gone totally online. And we already were doing Zoom. We were already doing, Facebook events. So we just transitioned to doing solely that, which is fine. We were already doing it. So a lot of my day is, following up with my clients. It may be a Zoom or a phone call where I'm helping educate somebody on health and wellness products that Arbonne has. I might be coaching somebody over the phone or via messenger, however that may be, however people are comfortable, right? I'm coaching them through their healthy living. So I'm checking in with them on how their day is going, how, using their products is going, if they need help with, what to consume that day, what not to eat, what are some good substitutes. So I'm doing health and wellness coaching on clean eating also throughout the day. And then I'm also doing some Zooms like this where it's groups, like yesterday I did 2 Zooms. So my days can look a little different. I do a business networking group, which is actually how I learned about Always Lean Forward. And I get exposed to great organizations and businesses, and through my business networking group. So that is one thing I do. And then in the evening, I did a Zoom where it was a healthy happy hour, and it was really educating people for about 30 minutes on what our nutrition program looks like and also on what our business looks like. So it's kind of sporadic, but the nice thing is that I'm able to fit in the pieces, throughout my day on how it works best for me. So it could look a lot different for a lot of people. And a big piece, of course, is social media.
Yeah.
People, we get to connect with people with through social media. So a piece of my everyday is also social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, especially now, again, like I was saying earlier, like 2021, like business media. That's what my dad likes to call it. He's like, it's not even social media anymore. It's business media because everyone has to be on it.
Totally.
Like nowadays, you have to be like that's the new way to meet people, talk to people. So it's like a must.
Yeah.
So, and then a
Yeah.
question I was gonna ask
It's
you.
free.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It's like free networking. Exactly. So a question I was gonna ask you, would you say that what you do with health and wellness, would that be somewhat of what a nutritionist would do, or would that be something a little bit different?
Good question. Good question. So I'm not a nutritionist,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a double-edged sword when I've considered going back to school for nutrition. On the one hand, Arbonne has phenomenal training from naturopathic doctors, folks in medicine, like across the board, right? We have phenomenal training. So I feel like I've learned so much. I get to chat with people. When I chat with naturopathic doctors, nutritionists, people like that, it's really cool to see how much training I've had through Arbonne, because our conversations are very much so like, I can have a conversation with them, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we get each other, which reminds me that I've learned a lot through Arbonne,
Mm.
right? So that's one. So I feel like I've kind of had a free education through Arbonne, yet I've gotten paid throughout, which is
Yeah.
great. And then when I've still considered going back to school for a nutritionist or something of that sort, it's a double-edged sword, because in my business, a big part of what I do also, I coach people on how to build an Arbonne business. And so
Mm.
sometimes I don't want people to think, because there are naturopathic doctors and all, and all kinds of of folks in health related fields that also have an Arbonne business. I don't want people to think that an average person like me can't have a business like Arbonne.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of being my average person. I used to be a teacher, knew nothing about business, and just had a passion for health,
Yeah.
and learning more about it. Um, and I'm able to have an Arbonne business, because I don't want somebody to think, well, I'm not a nutritionist, I can't do what you do. And the reality is, in this business, you don't have to be. But a lot of the time, what a nutritionist often does is sometimes similar to some of the things that we do. But absolutely, when there's like medical stuff, I always say, go definitely talk to doctors. There are experts absolutely in something far more, right? But there's some similarities, absolutely.
Oh, wow, that's really good. So the other thing I've noticed you mention a lot is education. So
Yeah.
that was always the number one thing. I know when we first had our first phone call with you, that
Mhm.
was like my biggest thing that I noticed with you was rather than you telling me, "Oh, I do this, I do this, I want to do this," it's just I just want to educate people, like
Mhm.
educate
Absolutely.
people. 'Cause that's a really one big thing we're always on is education. So that's why I feel
Yeah.
like we were so well to connect is the education part. So something I would like to ask you is, uh, what would it have been like maybe your teacher background that made guided you to always educate people, or do you think you just always had that passion? Because like how I mentioned earlier, you had to have a passion to teach, really
Mhm,
to
mhm.
really
Yeah.
live in the teaching and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people say, that in my business they can tell I was a teacher.
yeah,
And I say, I do still educate. Now I just educate on health and wellness, right? And now I get to educate sometimes entire families, or maybe a certain part of the family, and it gets passed down to cycles. Like I say, in my family, in my immediate family, I feel like we've changed the cycle for my family, and we've educated our kids on how to lead a healthy life. And so, no fault of our parents, it's just we know better now.
yeah,
And also, when I was little, there was also a lot less chemicals and junk than there is now.
mm,
Thank goodness for science,
yeah,
but there's a lot more chemicals now. There's a lot more chemicals now out there, which is one thing, but also we know better now. So um, I'm all over the place, but yes. So I've helped educate my kids, right? And so I know they're going to pass that down. And so I get to help educate families on what is in our food or in products we put on our skin, that can be dangerous. And that's really important to me. So I feel like, although people feel that maybe I'm a good educator because I was a teacher before, yeah, there's probably truth in there somehow, right? There's a piece of that for sure. But I think at the end of the day, what excites me the most, what inspires me the most, what I love the most is when I can share information with people and I know that they're taking something away from it, right? And even if, because at the end of the day, my business is product sales, right? Health and wellness product sales. But at the end of the day, I get paid on products. But definitely what I love the most is the education piece, because it's like, when something fires you up inside and you
yeah,
like had fun and it was exciting, it's always where I get to educate somebody on a different way to live, right? A lifestyle,
yeah.
whether health and wellness or also our business, that also inspires a lot of people. So that's what I love the most. And oftentimes when you're just genuine about what you love and what you want to share with people, eventually it comes back, right? And it comes back in the way of people that want to work with you, or people that want to refer business to you, or, in business, we say a lot, people they're not buying my product. They're not buying the Arbonne product. They're not buying the whatever it is, right? Like I'm having my energy fizz.
Yeah,
They buy
exactly.
me. they buy you.
Exactly.
You know, people join you. So you can have the most amazing business, the most amazing product, but
But
really you, that's what
exactly.
people want. And you could have the opposite, right? I guess. But so yeah, so hopefully that answers the question.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's just like truly inspiring, especially to last. Like people buy into you. They don't buy like yeah, you like you said, you could have the coolest product. Like you could have this, you could have that, but it's like what are they doing that for? Like are they okay trusting you? Can they trust you? Do you have integrity, loyalty and stuff like that? So like that's really
Yeah,
inspiring.
exactly. And that's one thing I've learned through my business networking group, which is how I met you, is people do business with people they know, like, and trust,
Yeah,
right? And that's just the reality of it.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and it's true. Yeah. So we're in the it feels more that we're like in the relationship building business, in the personal development business, in the business of building people, you know, and we just
Oh,
happen to also have an amazing product to go with
yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, I can only imagine because I'm thinking like with health and wellness, you have to kind of lay out all your layers because if you really want the true best version of yourself, you have to tell them like especially with health and wellness, like you have to know people's weight, stuff like that, eating habits. So it's like that's usually personal stuff. So yeah, they would have to
Yeah.
have a great deal of trust and
Yeah.
integrity with you. So yeah, that's perfect. So I think moving along, I think what I'd like to know is let's say if someone was interested in having a consultation with you,
Mhm.
how would that go? Would it just be one session, one quick session, or would it be multiple mini sessions? Or just you can go ahead and explain how would that
Yeah.
usually work?
How I work. So it's interesting because it depends on the person. I really believe in what works for the person is what works for the person, and I mold myself to the way somebody works. I have multiple ways of providing information, but some people want to have a Zoom and see my
Mhm.
face. Some people don't want to do that. Maybe not right away, right? Some people don't even want to have a phone call, right?
Yeah.
Some people, you know, want to just gather information via message, right, or via email. Some people want a link, right? They don't want anything where there's communication. So everybody is different. The information's the same, right? But the way people want it is different. And so I really, there's not like, okay, this is my information, that's it, we're done. No. Again, it's relationship building because I can have a Zoom with somebody and again, at the end of the day, I get paid on sales, but it may or may not result in product sales, and that's okay. You know, if it does, great. If it doesn't, great. Because often, really, my business it really is about relationship building, and so when people say like, how much do you get paid on this or that person, or you know, it's like it's hard to say because you know, I people rebuy our products, so I'm still getting paid on my first client because they still rebuy products over 8 years later, right? But also sometimes, you know, maybe somebody doesn't become a client, but somewhere down the road they say, oh, I know somebody that can help you, right? And so I just never know where it can go. We say, you know, it's like following the rabbit trail. So it just depends on the person, what they need, what they want, how much information they want, right? The great thing is there's tons of information, right? And so I first ask the person what what drew them to me, or if I see something where I can help us solve a problem, then I might offer it, right? Like on social media, people post things all the time. I need help with this, or oh my goodness, you know, I have this going on, or I need, you know, whatever it is, right? um, so if I can serve somebody and say, I might have a solution to your problem, whether it's a skin issue, a weight management issue, whatever it is, right? And if they want it, great. And I might ask some more questions to see what it is I can help them with. And I prefer to connect, right? But if they don't want to connect via phone call or via Zoom, I'm like, no problem. Would you like to hop on a Zoom where you can have your video off and you know, I
Yeah.
give them that option, right? So I kind of go down the layers of this is best, right, for relationship building. And if they're not open to that, then I'm like, what questions can I answer? And I might send them a link or just answer their questions. So I know that's not one exact answer, but hopefully that kind of
No, no, that yeah, it does because like everyone is different, and for me, I'm more of a like let's hop on a Zoom. I want to know about you, know about me. I'm more interactive. But yeah, there's people who are rather just, hey, let me give you my information, stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely understandable.
yeah.
And then I know you mentioned when you were talking right now that you've been doing your business for 8 years.
Mhm.
One question I usually like to ask people, um, what would you want to have known when you started back then that you know now?
I like that one.
What would you do differently if you could?
Okay. Okay. Well, there's a list. There's a list
Yeah.
of stuff. No, no matter what, it's still always, it happened like that for a reason, right? It's like
Yeah.
maybe I was just wasn't ready at that time. I would say I would say the one big thing that comes to mind right away is something I didn't know. So here's the thing. I've always believed in lifelong learning, right? I've always believed in that. I've always been a reader. I've always wanted to learn. I still want to go back to school, just to learn. But I didn't realize that business is so much about personal, professional growth and development. I didn't know that. And so I would say that I wish I had understood that, or I would share that with somebody, is to say, and we say this in our business, but I believe it's true for any business. We say that your business will not outgrow you. So really, if we need to continue to grow as individuals, personally and professionally, right? Whether it's training, reading, even if it's audiobooks, always learning more about business, about your industry, about how to be a better leader, whatever it may be, right? I would say that is probably the key thing that I wished I had truly internalized from day one, because it took me a while. And then even then, it was like inching. It's like if
Yeah.
I was devouring what I've been devouring in the last few years since day one, I would have grown exponentially in terms of my mindset and my business growth as well. So I would say that's probably the key, absolutely,
Okay.
for any business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Already on the topic of like when you started, when you first started, was there anything that kind of like hesitated or like leaving your job? Because how long were you a teacher again?
I was a teacher for about 7 years, and
Okay.
I worked in higher education for about 5 years. So I was in education for about 13 years.
Okay, then when you first started with Arbonne, what did you commit? Were you doing that part time and then part or doing your teaching? So then,
So, mhm.
no, go ahead.
So I started my business part time while I was still teaching part time.
Okay.
I decided, so I taught full time for about 7 years. I worked full time, right after college. And that school year, because I was a teacher, I decided to go about part time because I had my baby.
Mhm.
Honestly, I always say it's like the baby was the catalyst, but the reality is, even from before kids, I love to travel, for example, and I just knew that I didn't want to be in that rat race that we are in large part here in our
Yeah.
society, where we're just looking for the weekend or the 2 weeks off a year. I wanted to design my life, so it was almost like the baby was the catalyst. It was like the
Mhm.
reason to say, yay, I get to do something right now. I'm going to use my baby as my excuse. um, but um, but I decided that year, okay, I'm going to teach part-time, right? I had my baby, I'm going to teach part-time. I actually also decided that year to start an in-home childcare, which, by the way, lasted a year. That was part-time too, and that was not a decision for me. So we were talking about little kids earlier, right?
Yeah.
um, it takes a special person, and I'm not that person. um, and then I also started my Arbonne business part time. So I was doing a lot of things, right? And I realized, in fact, my husband was the one that said, "You only enjoy Arbonne." And I said, "You're
Mm,
right." I said, "You're right.
mm,
One thing is, you can do good at something, right? And it could be
yeah,
for the greater good, but you also have to enjoy it. Otherwise,
you're right.
it's like, what are you putting out there, right?" So I really enjoyed my business. It was very social, as well as, I believed what I was putting out there. So anyway, so I only did all of that in a few months. come that January, so like halfway through that school year, I decided to stop teaching and I decided to focus on my Arbonne business. And I just really pumped, I cranked it up at that point. And that's one of the great things about our business is you can decide to crank it up, or you can decide I'm going to crank it down because life is happening or I have other things I'm focusing on right now. So from that point forward, so for the first few months, is the short answer. I kind of did a few things. I could be part-time teaching and my business. And then I decided to crank up my business. Regardless though, most people do this business for the flexibility, like I mentioned. So it's still kind of like part-time hours in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's somewhere kind of in between. So that's the nice thing, is that we can decide if we want to work our business part-time or full-time, which is nice because a lot of people decide to do this alongside a full-time career if they want to.
Yeah, exactly. The flexibility is amazing.
Yeah.
What I was gonna ask, um, when you first started, or when you like decided that transition, or when the baby was the catalyst,
Mhm.
what was there any like factors that kind of scared you from going to just full time, or when you said cranking it up, like was there anything that scared you? Like, were you scared of using because that like guaranteed check, or now like when your business, it's kind of like who
Yeah,
knows?
that's a really good question, because that's scary for a lot of people, is the risk, right?
Yeah.
There is a risk in business, right? At the end of the day, business is not steady,
Yeah.
right? And that's risky. Um, I think what probably scared me the most, that I didn't realize for a long time, was what people thought.
Mhm.
And it's not something that I think I admitted to myself for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are scared of what does not fit into the box of the 9 to 5 and
Yeah.
what we were raised to do. The more I have learned about business in general, right? Not just health and wellness, not just network marketing, just business in general, is we're a very small percentage of the population,
Yeah.
period,
Yeah.
right? A.
Exactly.
So that makes us special already. And then the other piece is the people who make it is an even smaller percentage.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're smarter. It doesn't mean you have a better product. It doesn't mean any of that. What I've learned is that at the end of the day, it's what you continue to learn and your persistence and your grit, right? Um, Most people that are really successful in this world, it's not because they were born that way, right? Yes, there are skills and all of that. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, what the persistence and the grit and all of that, that trumps it all, right? I mean, think about the athletes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, they have, of course, their skill,
Natural gifts.
but how many times did they mess up? It was really all the practice,
Yeah.
right? It's just that they
Exactly.
practiced and they were out there more, and it didn't matter how many times they failed. So that's kind of like the way I look at myself and my business, was a lot of that mental stuff that
Yeah.
happens of what will people think. I'm selling stuff now, I'm not
Mhm.
using my master's degree, I'm not in education. A lot of that was kind of like the dips and the fails,
Yeah.
right? What felt like fails. But it's not. We're just a small percentage, and there's a large part of the population that can also learn that there's another way, right? There's another way, and it takes time, and it takes grit, and it takes determination, and it takes a lot of people potentially thinking you can't do it, right?
Exactly.
Um, so those dips, I think, is getting past all of that and continuing and getting better. It's a small percentage of the population that does it.
Mhm.
So those are kind of the scary pieces, is, where the dips are, and a part of that is the risk factor. But it's like there's also a saying, and I probably read it and heard it in a million books. It's giving up the good for the great,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
You really do have to give up the good for the great, and give up the comfortable nook of where I am for, well, what if you can design your life,
Yeah.
and what if you get to decide what that looks like?
Yeah.
And some risk is going to be involved.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because
yeah.
what I always see things like, say, as a business aspect, like coming from like a job, or how I see coming from like a job, or when people switch from job to a business, it's like you might always be able to maybe get money back, but the thing you'll never get back is time. Like, time is just inevitable. You can never get time back. You might be able to get some money back, or like if you do it for 3 years or so, from your career. You might be able to go back to your career and get that money back, but like time, you never get time. So like flexibility,
True.
things like that, spending time with your kids,
Mhm.
things like that, that's just inevitable. Like you can never get that stuff back. So it's like,
It's true, and it's true. Time is absolutely the commodity I'm most interested in.
yeah, exactly. And then what I was gonna ask you, as you've been doing this for 8 years, so where do you see yourself maybe in like the next 5 years?
Okay. So, oh man. So again, the list is long, right? So as far as my business goes, I see having been able to help a lot more people, right? On a monthly basis, I really want to be able to help 10 new people in my business, for example, right? And that's just like the short term. But in 5 years, over time, what that can look like is, gosh, that's a lot of people in terms of health and wellness, right? In terms of my like business, I see really having a solid like 4 to 6 leaders, true leaders. I have leaders on my team now, right? But truly having duplicated me, right?
Yeah,
Having 6 of me
yeah,
who, really that's what it is helping people get to where you are. And I think it's Zig Ziglar who says, you help more people get what they want and you will get what you want, right?
exactly.
So in 5 to 6 years, 5 years or so, yeah, I see myself multiplied, and not exactly me, right?
Yeah.
But having helped people get to having more freedom and flexibility in their life and a healthier lifestyle, and people who are helping other people really, across the globe. We're Arbonne is in 6 countries, and so I really also see right now my business is in a few states, but I also see my business in 5 years being global. I dipped into Australia for a little bit, but that didn't quite pan out, but it's okay. So I see my business being global, which right now with what we have technology wise, it's totally possible. I also, interestingly enough, I think is why the universe or God, whatever it is that folks believe in, put like your organization in front of me. Is one of my visions also is to closely align, like I had mentioned
Yeah.
before, with an organization, maybe one, maybe more, I don't know. But there are some that are kind of calling my name right now. So being able to philanthropically give through my business to an organization steadily, as well as have my family involved, that's really important to me, steadily. Maybe that's volunteering, however often in the year. And then also being able to connect Arbonne, on the grander scale with an organization, because we have a charitable foundation. So I really see philanthropy being a big part of my business. Because like Simon Sinek says, it's really about the higher purpose, right? It's like you can have a drive to make a lot of money and to have the big house, and all of that is a piece of it, right? But at the end of the day, if it's not bigger than you, it's
Mhm.
not going to go the distance, right? And there's other pieces in there that are beyond me, right? Like my mom is elderly, being able to have a back house for her, or
Yeah.
like we take care of her in large part now too, but being able to have her here. So taking care of our family, absolutely, but also doing something on a grander scale, is steadily, is also a piece of my goals. So
Man,
yeah.
that's amazing. That's awesome. That's just really inspiring. Kind of gave me goosebumps with that one. That's just inspiring.
Thank you.
One for the last question. It's kind of like a fun, interactive question.
Okay.
You, I know I picked this up as you were talking. I see you love to read. You love to read. So I'm gonna ask you, what is one book? What is your favorite book, and what is one book you would recommend to someone, and why?
So hard. Oh gosh, so hard. One book, dear me, like really one. Um, it might be, I can't pick one. It might be Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Mm,
It might be that one, because that can, I think, be applied to almost anything. And it helps you focus on like the bigger vision. In fact, I need to reread it again. Um, that might be it, but I feel like there's something else that I need to share as far as books goes. But if it comes to me, I'll share. I would probably be Start With Why, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and I think that's for anyone, regardless of industry or anything like that. That's probably a big one. I feel like there's another one at the tip of my tongue. I'll get back to you if I think of what that is at the tip of my tongue. Yeah.
and
But
then
anyway, go
what is,
ahead.
what is your favorite book?
Oh, you
Favorite
know
book
what?
either of
Actually,
all time or at the moment, either one.
oh, there's probably two. And interestingly enough, they're books that I read a long time ago that I also need to reread. There's probably two. One is really, I love the author Paulo Coelho and The Alchemist. The
Mm,
Alchemist, probably of all time, is a favorite book. Um, and then another book that was a favorite for a long time that was Viktor Frankl's um, Holocaust survivor. What's the name of the book? Viktor Frankl's. I can't remember the name of the book now. He's also a psychologist, so there's a lot of psychology in there. But Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Man's Search for Meaning.
mm,
That's a great one too. Um, there's one that was kind of a big deal to me. And there's a lot of versions of it. And you'll hear a lot of people say, Think and Grow Rich. That's like a classic
yeah.
in any business. You'll hear Think and Grow Rich. However, I'm not going to say Think and Grow Rich. What I'm trying to say is there are a lot of versions of it, and a lot of people don't talk about those versions. For me, being a woman in business, a first generation woman in business, and a Latina woman in business
Yeah.
is very different from other people's experiences, right? There are different versions of Think and Grow Rich, and one of them is by Leonel Sosa. It's Think and Grow Rich, a Latino choice.
Mm,
And that was, it shifted me dramatically. And there's a lot of versions of it. So versions for, different types of people,
yeah.
written by different types of people, but based on the classic Think and Grow Rich. That was great because everybody's experience is different, and the way we make sense of business and life depends on our experience, right? And that one right there just made so much sense to me, because a lot of what we think is wrong here is not wrong here.
Yeah.
It's my experience is different. So I cannot
Mm,
necessarily apply everything that has a different experience. Maybe, born and bred here and, 10 generations here in the US, very different experience, and male, is going to have a different experience than me, so that one to me was pretty earth shattering, because it really meshed a lot what was happening in my brain in terms of business mindset and my culture and where I come from.
mm.
And I think that's really important that was really important for me. And I think it's really important for a lot of people.
Man, this is amazing, amazing, amazing. Yeah, I think I've definitely read Think and Grow Rich. That's recommended to me by multiple people. Yeah, I've read that, but I actually didn't even know there was different versions and
Look
different
up the
versions for different
versions.
people.
Look up the different versions.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out for sure.
I think that's really where it's at.
Because it probably gives you that more like personalized. Because I feel like the Think and Grow Rich is more like just generalization. Even though it's a great book, don't get me
It's
wrong,
great. It's
but
great.
it's more like a generalization. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like probably each one's probably like, oh, it kind of hits more home for me
Mhm.
than it would hit from other people.
Yeah. Look them up. They're interesting. Yeah.
Perfect. Then awesome. Then with that being said, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this interview with us. We
Absolutely.
appreciate it. It was definitely a great talk and look forward
Thank
from
you.
hearing more from you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. And thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I can't wait to see the end product. So
Of
thank you
course.
for having me. I had fun.
Awesome.